This is Transistor.fm.
What can you expect when you build your own SaaS app? How does growth happen? Paul Farnell returns for part 2, and man, it's going to blow your bootstrap and socks off. He shares growth numbers, revenue, and users, as well as insights on running an app in Europe as opposed to America. If you have a product team, you probably want to know where you're wasting time and how you can be more efficient. For this, I use Sprintly. It helps surface the things that slow down development so you can focus on shipping faster. It's project management software for agile software teams. You and your team can try Sprintly for free by going to www.sprint.ly. Listen all the way to the end of the episode today because we've got some news and shout-outs after the interview. Now it's time to get back with Paul in part 2. You mentioned that building email client testing ended up being actually a really difficult problem. And you didn't quite realize that it was going to be that hard. And there's kind of a trend in a lot of that I've noticed it with a lot of apps. Like there's some apps that, let's say, take project management software. So project management software, you have to get some things right. Like you have to get the user experience right, and the way that you have to have maybe a philosophy of project management behind it, etc. But technically, there's not a huge hurdle there to overcome. But in your case, and even if let's think about something like Stripe, where there's actually it's just like this mucky world that no one wants to go into. So no one wants to go into email testing because that's yucky. Like designers don't like HTML emails. You have to deal with all these horrible clients, And if we take Stripe as another example, here's another really gross problem. You have to deal with banks and payment gateways, and it just seemed. What do you think? What first of all, what got you through that point of saying, well, this is actually a really kind of yucky problem? It's not. It ended up being a lot harder to do. What got you through the development of that? And maybe just start with that.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think that's actually really a very perceptive thing, actually. That you mentioned, the trend of there being more things like this, and I think you're right. Companies like Simple, as well as Stripe, and these folks who are there's a lot more kind of challenging stuff going on in the back end than maybe there was a few years ago. What got us through it, I suppose, it was. Just sort of relishing the challenge of making it work, and that incredible satisfaction when it felt to me, I suppose, and I understood how it was working, but it did feel just magical to send an email to this random address that was shown on a web page, and then wait, and then the Ajax updating of that page, saying when the email had arrived, and then showing screenshots of that. I mean, even now, I still find that kind of just I don't know, it was a kind of a magical thing when we got it working. Because it felt quite different. It felt, it's hard to describe, isn't it? But it feels, I say more robust, but feels like certainly more challenging than building, a to-do list app or, project management app. And that's not to make light of that, because it has its own challenges. But it was, I don't know, I think, just relishing that challenge. I know that Matt in particular, just loved building it and loved building something that people hadn't actually done before, at that point, automating Lotus Notes 7, on an old version of Windows, through all these COM libraries and all this crazy stuff, writing, C++, to get this thing to work, to then deliver that result, to a beautiful Rails, web app on the front end with this great design. It's just, I don't know, it's a really interesting thing to work on, I suppose. And and it just it felt like a challenge, but very much in a good way. Just exciting to get it to work.
I'm trying to challenge my thinking on, because when I get an idea, often it's, here's a form, you input data, the data goes in the database, you retrieve the data, you show it to the user. There's a lot of web apps built like that, and there's a lot of value in there too. I think there's still room in that space, if I wanted to, build another CRM or what have you. But there's this other space, like I don't know what else to call it, but like that yucky stuff that no one wants to deal with. And often we don't think about those opportunities. Like now that we've seen Litmus and Stripe and some of these other things, we say, man, that makes so much sense. Like, yeah, you can see how there'd be some hurdles to overcome, but then you can see there's a great business in kind of these unsexy stuff that people just grind through on all the time and don't even think about it. Just like, I just have to grind through this. It's an unfortunate, unsavory part of my job or whatever. But there's like actually a lot of opportunities there.
Yes. Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. And I suppose we didn't think about it, as insightfully as that when we began. We didn't see this as like a barrier to entry, like, because we're dealing with a really yucky kind of tough problem here. We just we just kind of built it because we thought it would be neat, and it seemed like something that people were struggling with, and so there was value in solving that. But yeah, there are still very, very, very few people doing email testing, and and also as part of our business now, we have an API and lots of integrations with partners who are using our email preview tool within their own applications. Which I think just underlines what you were just saying. It's a really tough problem to solve, and that technology is hard to build. And so, when other people, there's obviously lots of other people that need an email preview feature as part of their app. They don't want to go build that whole thing themselves, and so they're very, very happy to come to us. So that's a decent chunk of our business now, is people outsourcing that feature to us as well. Yeah,
I'm going to have you come back for a future episode, because there's a few things that I've thought about that I'd love to talk to you about in the future. One of those is, this idea of building a product with other people. So often we build things as, we try to build things as solo founders, and it looks like you've done a good job of teaming up with folks. We're not going to talk about it this time. The other thing I wanted to talk about that we're not going to talk about this time, people can expect this in the future, I'll have to get you back, is it looks like you've been able to build a great team as well. And I think that could be an interesting subject. What I would like to talk about in the last minutes we have here is, I think, the marketing. So what have you done to grow this company from 100 sign-up trials on Site Vista? What have you tried that's worked? And maybe just give us a sense of, growth. Like how does growth happen with a SaaS app? What could people expect?
Yeah, good question. Gosh, we have tried all sorts of things. In terms of growth was, honestly, it was very slow for the first. We're 7 years in now. For the first 3 years or something, if you look at our kind of curve of our revenue, it starts off growing very, very slowly for the first 2.5 years at least, and then kind of gradually picks up pace. And the last year or two have been really good for us. But
can you give us a sense of, like, where were you at 2.5 years in?
Where were we at? That's a great question. Well under $1 million a year. I would say probably $200,000-$300,000 a year, something like that. Like 2 or 3 years in, I think. that kind of region anyway.
Okay, and how many active users?
Yeah, good question. I guess I should know all these off the top of my head. I mean, I know our current stuff. Gosh, I guess. I mean, probably in the region of, I'm going to get this wrong now, I'm sure, but like 500 or something like that.
Okay.
I mean, relatively small.
And how many users do you have now?
Yeah, I mean, the users now we're up to just over 100,000. Which is awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
So 100. So from around, let's just say ballpark 500 users 2.5 years in to now 7 years in, you're at 100,000.
Yes.
And so, I mean, to me, that actually seems like fairly fast growth. What was there a big spike at some point, or was this just kind of gradually adding, 1,000 users a month or something?
Yeah, no, I would say that there was a spike or what felt like a tipping point. Yeah, around that kind of 3-year mark, 3.5 years in, I guess. Yeah, I mean, it would be great to be able to say, hey, we did this, these two things, and that's how everything kind of took off. There was a whole combination of things, some product, some marketing, that I think taken together, things kind of started to take off. I can go over a few of them, and it's because they all happened around the same time. It is frustrating that I can't point to one that was great, and maybe there's something else here that actually made no difference at all. We opened an office in the US, so it was around that point that we kind of came to America, came across the pond. And at that time, we were still just 5 people, 3 years in. And I was the first to move. We're all in the UK. I was the first to move over here to Cambridge, and I think that had an impact. We had a lot of customers in the US, and we also had a lot of potential partnerships in the US that we were losing out to other competitors, or larger companies of ours that were based in America. And I think as a small kind of underdog that was also overseas, and our API agreement was in UK law, and actually for the longest time we were charging people in euros, which now seems crazy, but at the time we thought, oh, we won't use pounds because it's only Britain. But euros, I mean, it's the whole of Europe. I mean, everybody knows the euro, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody knows the euro. Nobody knows the euro unless you're in a country that uses the euro. Certainly no one in North America has any clue what the exchange rate of the euro is. And certainly I'd be shocked if you ever bought anything online that was priced in euros. That was one of our biggest mistakes, honestly. And actually just, that is one thing, honestly, I can point to and say, when we switched from euros to dollars, basically that same week, we saw a shoot up in sales. It was crazy.
Why is that? Because, I mean, I would say the same thing. I would say, I mean, Europe is a huge place. There must be, thousands and thousands of companies and lots of dollars in play. How come America is still the place where web apps seem to thrive?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure that I don't think it's the only place that web apps thrive, but certainly, I think if you're selling anything online to the English-speaking world, you're best off charging in US dollars. I think that's just a given. I think our mistake with the euro is, mainland Europe and all these countries are using the euro, but we're not doing it in their language. So we sort of, I don't know. It was just this weird kind of in between. It was all in English, but it was in a currency that of predominantly non-English speaking countries. So, but no, I mean, I do think that certainly I can say from personal experience, moving from Manchester, and our office was in Leeds, just like an hour away. so kind of the north of England to Cambridge, Massachusetts, made a huge difference just in terms of the people you meet and the kind of expectations that people have here was really interesting to me. People, I don't know, their kind of goals and their what they're kind of aiming for is so much bigger here. It's crazy, Whereas I think I don't know. I think it's such a generalization, so it's unfair for me to really say it. But I think in Britain, at least, people were thinking. The people that I ran into, at least in the north of England, were thinking much, much smaller. So it kind of opened my eyes a bit coming over here, and and kind of living that in a way that just reading about this kind of thing online didn't do.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
It made a difference to kind of live it.
Yeah. So the environment, just being in this environment where, a climate where people, Boston is a pretty entrepreneurial area. Is it Boston that you're in right now?
I live in Boston. We're in Cambridge, just across the river.
Okay.
Is where our office is.
Yeah. So that area is quite entrepreneurial. So I can see just sometimes being in that environment where everyone's thinking big and everyone's kind of going after, something bigger than just a local market. That can make a huge difference.
Yeah. I think it. I do think it did for me. Having that kind of energy around you made so much difference. Just at least for me personally, and I think kind of reinvigorated us. And then anyway, we began hiring people over here, and Matt moved over here as well. And now most of the team is based in Cambridge. But yeah, that definitely made a difference, having the US presence and winning some of these partnership deals that I don't think we would have ever really got to if we'd have only ever been in the UK. Which is a bit frustrating, I suppose, because you think that, as a software company, you're online, the internet, doesn't matter where you are. It still kind of does. Some things do. If it's a larger deal, or I think it does still matter where you are, whether that's just the kind of public aspect of the company and how much people trust you or want to do business with you, or whether it's even just your own kind of mindset and being around people who are like-minded and are kind of working on similar things. And there are these hubs of that, and the biggest of those are in America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, how big of a deal were those partnerships in terms of your growth? Was that did that lead to kind of that inflection or tipping point that you had around that time?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, they definitely helped a lot. I don't think they were as big a deal as we actually thought they were going to be, in all honesty. But I think what they actually helped with. So, for example, you can use Litmus's preview tools from within Campaign Monitor. A tool. I presume you've heard of it. Obviously, you work at a competitor, but you can use Litmus's tools from within there, and their audience is very much like web designers, people that design their own templates and are fairly tech savvy, and that's been an amazing partnership. We love those guys, love what they're doing, love the integration. Everything about that's positive, I think, on both sides. But I think what really helped for us, more than just the actual cash that came from Campaign Monitor to us each month, through that partnership, what helped more was that affiliation with them and that exposure in a marketing sense to their customers, and I think that we have gained a lot of business through that kind of referrals from them, and made more money through that, I think, than actually through the direct integration. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And how did you pursue that partnership? Did they approach you or did you approach them?
Yeah, so with that one, they approached us, actually, in the very, very early days. So they were one of the first people that approached us about that. It took us a while to actually figure out the details and get that partnership signed up a year or two later on. But yeah, they were one of the first people to reach out to us and say, hey, we'd love to integrate this into our product, which was actually, at that time we were getting a few inquiries like that from email service providers, and that was a side of the business that we hadn't ourselves considered. This kind of integrations side of things that turned out to be, a great channel for us.
Yeah. Yeah. And what else? What else did you think that you've done that has worked for you in terms of, because the biggest problem a lot of people have is just getting people to know, first of all, know about your company and your product, and then getting them to care. So what have you done, do you think, in that respect, getting people to just even know who you are?
Yeah. In the earlier days, I think one of the things that set us apart was the design of the software. I don't know how replicable this is for other people listening here, but at that time, there were fairly few sites. There were sites. I'm trying to think of some of the names, but like CSS Beauty. There were like a handful of these kind of showcase sites that would pick up on cool new CSS design. This is around the time, I guess, or a little bit after the whole switch from tables to CSS. Mm-hmm. And obviously being a tool for designers, a big source of traffic for us was when we would get featured on these sites. And so actually just, trying to build we got featured a lot when we first launched the site Vista, because we had quite a unique design with this fruit as part of it then. And then we got featured quite a bit again when we relaunched as Litmus and the redesign there. So that definitely helped a lot to get the word out around our target audience was being featured on those sites. Honestly, I knew a fair few people in the industry through doing the freelance work for a while. So getting them to kind of share it, and this is the whole blogging thing, kind of bigger then. But having people write reviews of us and share their thoughts on their blogs and that kind of thing in that industry that was all fairly close-knit, and I guess still is. That was definitely really helpful. Maybe it sounds obvious.
And maybe give us a sense of scale, like when you convinced some people to write blog posts about you, how many times did you do that? 5 times, 10 times, 20 times? Like what kind of scale are we talking about?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I guess a few dozen times, that we get written up, maybe a couple of months or something like that. Reaching out to people, or what we like to do as well is we would, it's all little tricks that we tried, I suppose, but we would, every single time before we launched any kind of new feature, we would make that available to a handful of people. We'd email out directly to people that we wanted to write about us and say, hey, we worked on this really cool thing. I'd love to get your feedback on it. Like before we launch, do you want to use this code or this link or whatever? Go try it out. And then they would be kind of chuffed about that, and they would want to write up a little post because they were one of the few people that got to see this like ahead of time and that kind of thing. That definitely worked well for us to kind of give them something first.
That's a good trick, giving them something exclusive. Here's a little preview just for you, and because people like that, and then they want to share that they've got this exclusive look at something new.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah, definitely. Trying to think what else we did. We once it was at one of those Future of Web Apps conferences. I think this must have been the year before I spoke there. The one that I spoke at was the web design one. Maybe this was the Future Web Apps before that. But it was a big conference in Britain, and there was like 1,000 people there or something like that. And we wrote a script that would, from their like conference social networky site, it got all of the websites of the attendees, or the domains of them. And then we wrote a thing which would go and test their web page across all the different browsers that we supported. And then it would take a screenshot, obviously, of all of them. And then we turned that screenshot into a business card using Moo. If you've used Moo for their business card printing. Yeah. And so what we ended up with was this enormous number of business cards. And on one side, it was a screenshot of their website. And on the back, it was a little blurb about Litmus and a link to go view the browser test results that we'd done of their site. And then we didn't actually pay the conference anything. We weren't a kind of sponsor or anything like that. But I just went there, got a table, put the table in the middle of the entrance, and laid out all these cards across the table. So as you came into the hall, you had to walk by this table that had all these little pictures on it, and you kind of look at it. Oh, hang on. And I think we had a little sign or something. And you realize, oh, these are all people's websites. Oh, wow, that's my website, And then you grab the card and you look at the results, and at least we got quite a few sign-ups for that.
I love that. I love that idea. Now, I think this is where we're going to close off, because this kind of brings up something I wanted to talk about, which is a lot of individuals, product people, have side projects. Litmus is a company that has side projects. You guys launched, even this example you just gave, that was an interesting side project. So can you tell me, you said that one actually converted fairly well?
Yes. Yeah, no, that was good. Yeah, that worked very well. Yeah.
And maybe talk about some other side projects you've tried. What's worked and what hasn't in terms of getting people to care about Litmus?
Yeah, I really like that way of putting it. The company has side projects. I think that's totally true. We have tried all sorts of kind of separate things. Let's see. Lots have worked. Lots have not worked. We tried a couple of different community things as side projects. So we had a site called DocType. Of an HTML page, and that was going to be a community for web designers. Well, it was, and we set that up. It was around the time that Stack Overflow had launched, and we loved that style. But this is before Stack Exchange or any, even the paid version of that. You couldn't use their software at all. And so we kind of built our own that was, I guess, model on their ideals, but not copying them design-wise at all. And we launched DocType, and we launched that to our list of web folks that we had at Litmus. But we did it, as a completely separate thing. Had a little Litmus logo off to the side, and that was good. I think it was a great community. We had some amazing people on there, especially the top contributors. Ultimately, I think as a project to get people to sign up for Litmus, it was not great, and we did end up shutting it down. Sadly, a few months back, we shut it down. We kept all the content, but it's all just kind of static, read only. So if people need the answers to those questions, it's all still indexed, but it would just the community is no longer there. I think the problem there for us was that it became more of a discussion forum for web design people as opposed to email marketing people, which is absolutely fine. That's just not really our core audience anymore. I think, as I say, there are better, if you just want to do browser testing, there are better products out there to do browser testing. And so, we really need to reach email folks rather than web design folks these days. And so it wasn't really successfully doing that, wasn't converting people as well as it could. So, we have to kind of focus where we can. Yeah. And we shut that down.
Was there another side project that you felt like was particularly effective in kind of feeding a funnel into Litmus?
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I mean, there's been a few. Something that we launched years and years ago, actually now, was a tool called Fingerprint, which was a way of letting you see what email clients people on your mailing list were using. So you embedded this little bit of HTML code, and then you sent out your newsletter as normal to your list, and then we would give you charts saying, X% of people using Apple Mail, X% using Outlook, all that kind of thing. And actually at the time, this is fairly common now, or is becoming more common as a tool as part of other email marketing platforms. But at the time, nobody's actually done that before.
Yeah.
And so that was fairly unique. And so what we would do, we put our own, we would aggregate all the stats for people that had used this tool and put them up there as charts. And that was like the only source of reliable information for which email clients were popular. And so that got tons of traffic, and actually it still does. I mean, we redirect it. People still hit the old URL. That worked really, really well. And that was its own product. You could pay for these tracking codes. The stats, of course, and the content on there were free. But that was really good. And that's obviously very targeted to, if you care about which email clients people on your list are using, then you're going to care about how your email looks across those different email clients. That felt like a much better, lead in to the core Litmus service. And what we eventually ended up doing is folding Fingerprint into Litmus, and now we have this email analytics tool, which is part of Litmus, that you get on certain levels of price plan, which does the same thing and much more, and that's the analytics part that I touched on at the beginning. So Fingerprint is no longer in that sense, but that was a great, a very, very successful, so successful it became part of the core product. So that's a nice example of something that worked well.
Yeah. I think what's great that I've been able to, like Litmus, you do try a lot of things. So there's these side projects, and I think it's great that you can start something and try it out, and then if it doesn't work anymore, to either stop doing that, or if it's successful, even say, well, why don't we just put this into the product? That's fine too. I just love that idea of a company that is kind of actively building side projects all the time.
Yeah. It's something that we actually, what we did, I guess it's a few months ago now, we did like a hack week here at Litmus, where everybody dropped all their normal work, and each engineer built their own side project that had to be something related to Litmus. They did that in a week, and the goal of that, what they absolutely required, that at the end of the week, by Friday at like 3 p.m., it had to have been launched into production and announced on our blog. And so what that did is, I think we have 4 or 5 projects came out of that, all like kind of side projects. There was an email client stats one. There was like an interactive page testing one. There was a Windows desktop application that let you use some of Litmus's features as a desktop app. There was a whole host of stuff. And each of those, then we've kind of tracked which one is getting decent traffic and what are people using, and so eventually, the best of those will be folded in as part of Litmus again, and the ones that are less popular, we may have to discontinue eventually. But that was a nice way to within a week get 5 more of these side projects up and actually launched.
Yeah, man, Paul, I'm going to let you go now, but first you have to promise me that you're going to come back sometime in the future, and so we can finish this up and talk about, I think I've got a whole other show just with some of the things we didn't talk about.
Sure. No, I would love to, Justin. That'd be great.
Perfect. Well, where can people find you online?
I'm on Twitter as Unsalted.
Perfect. And you can see Litmus at litmus.com, and certainly go and check them out there. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Yeah, no, it's been fantastic. Thanks, Justin. It was a lot of fun.
Now it's time for some news and some shout-outs. First, I'd like to give myself a shout-out. I'm writing a book called Product People Secrets. You can find out more by going to productpeople.tv/book. I've interviewed some really great people like Jason Fried, Patio 11, Brennan Dunn, Nathan Barry, Rob Walling. And right now I'm writing a book that will feature their secrets, the techniques, beliefs, and habits they use to launch successful products. You can sign up at productpeople.tv/book and get a sample chapter as well as a chance to win a deluxe package when the book comes out. Next up, hover.com/productpeople. Register a domain with hover.com and use the promo code productpeople, all one word, to get 10% off your order. If you want to be featured in this shout-out section, the cost starts at $39, and it's a great way to reach our audience of product people, designers, developers, entrepreneurs. To purchase a shout-out, you can go to productpeople.tv/shoutout.
I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for listening. Podcast hosting is provided by transistor.fm. They host our MP3 files, generate our RSS feed, provide us with analytics, and help us distribute the show to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. If you want to start your own podcast or you want to switch to Transistor, go to transistor.fm/Justin and get 15% off your first year.